Sport Clips Haircuts Help a Hero program funds scholarships for U.S. veterans who are pursuing a college degree or vocational certification. Visit your nearest Sport Clips to learn more and donate from October 17th through November 11th.
I'm Andy Katz from ESPN, along with my co-host Seth Greenberg. On the latest edition of the ESPN College Basketball Podcast, we are going to discuss the notice of allegations at Louisville and Seth Greenberg on a tour around the country. Go to the ESPN app and click on the headphone icon to get our podcast.
This is Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
In the 7 games of this World Series, the Chicago Cubs scored 27 runs and the Cleveland Indians scored 27 runs. It came down to the 10th inning of Game 7 of the World Series, and the Cubs win it by a single run.
The swing and a slow chopper toward third. Here comes Bryant on to first, and the Cubs have won the World Series.
Golick, your emotions.
I need you to stop talking. Just stop talking.
Now, here's Mike and Mike.
Here we are, Mike and Mike, back and better than ever, presented by Progressive Insurance, our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And there are so many great things about sports. Too many to list them all, but for me, the best is the way it brings families together. It certainly did for me in my childhood. That's the biggest reason I'm sitting here today. And with that thought in mind, Mike, this moment, as Chris Singleton asked Joe Madden about the hat he had in his pocket last night, it almost brought both of us to tears as we played it for you in the first hour, and I wanted to play it again for those of you who are just waking up and joining us. This is what sports is all about.
It's a special night for you. You showed us the hat that your dad used to wear. He's not with us. You've got your first World Series championship.
Right there. There it is. Put it in my back pocket in the 10th inning. There you go, right there.
That's Dad's cap.
Yep.
Joe, congratulations.
Wow. Put it in his pocket and back pocket in the 10th inning. I mean, that
and as Chris Singleton asks him, for those of you who are not with us, he couldn't even speak. He just turned around and hugged him. If you want to save that moment forever, I know I just put it up on Instagram, and you did too.
Yeah, it's very just
at
amazing.
ESPN Greeny or at ESPN Golick on Instagram if you want to save those forever. As we bring our buddy Doug Glanville into the conversation, who played for the Cubs during his long major league career. It's hard to put into words. That moment, it's hard to put into words. All of the emotions that people across that city, across the country, and I guess across the world are feeling after 108 years of waiting.
Yeah, I mean, it is. There really are no words for it, other than recognizing that the history is beyond the local arena of Chicago, right? We're talking about an international team. I remember when they were on WGN and how they talked about America. I was in Costa Rica at one point watching Cubs highlights. So the span is huge already just on the footprint, but it's also about everybody coming together and recognizing that whenever you have a team that's had futility on the championship level, we all start to relate on some level. You want to believe we could all win regardless. And whether it's the Columbia Lions football team or, whether Prairie View, it starts to get to a point where you ask questions about the fairness of sport. And there's something that everybody can rally around, whether you're Chicago Cubs fans or not, that we all can win at some given time. And I think they've put that banner up well beyond the borders of Chicago.
Greeny has asked this of me and other former athletes, and now I was never in a Super Bowl, but just speaking as a former athlete, in a situation like this for the Cleveland Indian players, do they ever get over this?
No, you don't ever get over it. I mean, maybe if you win next year, but there,
helps.
but every year when the season ended, players, we'd all give each other hugs and thank each other because we knew there's probably 8 or 9 guys you were never going to play with again or ever see again. I mean, that's how transient and how much change there are around the game. So I think you recognize that there's a moment you're trying to capture. And, I was on the 2003 team, so that never leaves me. I mean, it was a great year, and it was the only time I ever personally made the postseason. But you're always, at that place where, we fell short. We were Game 7 NLCS, and obviously a lot of things just sort of went the wrong way. And for the Cubs now, it does put a little bit of a bookend for a Cubs player who had a career there. But you always know that, wow, what it could have been. And so many fans have the institutional knowledge and experience that really transcend what a player goes through. It's finite as a player, because I got there in 91. I was drafted. I didn't really understand all of it. And then you look at these generations of families that are now trying to pass this on, and they finally can cross over into the win column. And that's huge for the last 110 years of baseball history.
2003 Cubs is the team that Doug is talking about. For those unaware, that's the Bartman year. That's the year that they had the 3-1 lead. You had the 3-1 lead over the Marlins in the NLCS, and it slipped away. And they went on to beat the Yankees in the World Series. And something that Michael Wilbon brought up during the, if you're watching on TV, he did a little essay for us that we played for him. We were watching, and I don't know that this is necessarily significant to anything, but there's something I think that's nice as one who cares about the history of the sport. The Cubs, who are an historic franchise, look at the teams they beat to winning the championship. They beat the Giants, who are an historic franchise. They beat the Dodgers, a historic franchise, and they beat the Indians, a historic franchise. This is not to denigrate in any way the Diamondbacks or the Mariners or any of these other teams that came about much later, but there is something about the fact that all those teams have existed as long as the curse has existed, or roughly that long, that I think adds to this a little bit. There was a lot of history going on in this postseason and in this World Series.
I mean, you couldn't write a better script. I mean, it wrote itself, and that's the beauty of baseball, as sport. But you think about New York, right? The New York Giants and Brooklyn Dodgers, that history, whether it's Willie Mays or Jackie Robinson, all these legends that came through those organizations. And when you play, you become part of that fabric, the tapestry of history, which was a challenge for Cubs players. When I was drafted in 91, you want to respect that history, but as Joe Madden says, you don't want to let it define your future, right? So you're always like, and you see the veteran guys that are around. I remember Ron Santo and Ernie Banks and Billy Williams, and there's so many players we lost as the family of the Cubs, right? I mean, Kevin Foster, you have to give a shout out to these guys, Jeremy Gonzalez and Jesse Hollins. So, and even the scout that was part of the organization in the front office, Billy Hartford, who kind of missed the moment because he passed on. So it's so much bigger than life. It's also the past of people who gave you so much as part of the organization that are no longer with us.
Yeah, Ron Santo just died recently. Ernie Banks, as everyone knows, just died recently. Harry Carey is somewhere up there singing right now, no question about it. Doug Glanville is here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. Jesse Rogers covers the Cubs for ESPNChicago.com and for us here on Mike and Mike and all of ESPN. And as I've mentioned many times during this run, Jesse and I go back together 25 years to when we used to write song parodies, and we rewrote this to No Cubs No more times than I can possibly imagine because they were so bad. It sure sounds different this morning. Jesse Rogers is with us, and see if he is dried off after all the champagne last night. How are you, Jess?
That's a shirt I'm going to keep because we don't know if it'll happen again in our lifetimes. It was quite the night. I think one of you just said it. It was a Hollywood script to see that game play out the way it did, the twists and turns. Of course, when they tied it up, I'm talking about the Indians, everybody back in Chicago, I'm sure, were thinking, uh-oh, here we go again. But this is a different Cubs team, and I think Doug touched on it. I mean, they are really a different team than anything I've ever been around. And I'll tell you, I know there's a lot of magical, romantic ideas about this team and stuff. I will tell you, they are just very deep and talented. And that's what got it done at the end of the day. They have a deep, deep team. They are able to go to the bench and get their third catcher. They've barely played him on defense or offense. Miguel Montero goes in there, and what does he do? He gets a 1-2-3 inning out of Aroldis Chapman after Chapman blew the game in the eighth. And then he gets a game-winning hit in the 10th inning because he added that insurance run which they needed. I'm talking about Miguel Montero. So just a very deep and talented team. We can't forget that with all the sort of romantic ideas of this team winning the World Series.
Well, so let's go back to its inception, Jesse, because you were there. I remember sitting and talking to you. Mike, you and I were doing one of our rooftop, the rooftop events across the street there, and Jesse came over and we were talking, and you were talking to me, Jesse, about all these guys that Theo was assembling in the minors. You were on Chris Bryant before anyone else I heard talking about Chris Bryant, but all of these guys. So take it back to the beginning, because you've been covering it as long as that's been going on, and how he put this thing together basically from scratch.
I'll tell you exactly what the key was. He maximized tanking. We talk about teams tanking, getting high draft picks, trading for young players. Some do it very well, and we've seen Pittsburgh over the years kind of build up a team. But what Theo did in a short amount of time, he maximized the idea of tanking, of losing games. What he did was he wasn't worried at all about a win total at the end of the year. He wasn't worried at all about putting fans in the stands, anything like that. If there was a trade to be made in June, he would do it. If there was a young deal, a deal for a young player, which maybe was you're not sure about him, but they had a veteran to dump, they would do it. They just loaded up on young players as much as possible, and he just did it better than anyone else, and that's why it came together so quickly. And of course, it comes down to scouting as well. Chris Bryant was an easy pick, but there were a lot of picks along the way, whether it be trades, whether it be the draft picks, that made the difference. So that's why they were able to do this so quickly. They didn't care about a 500 record, anything like that. They said, get young, get better, get talented, bring in character guys. They did that in a matter of 3 or 4 years here, and that's why they're World Series champions.
So, Jesse, you're a homegrown kid there. You've been a part of the whole lovable loser thing, and there are many there way older than you that have dealt with it for way longer than you. What's the identity now? Everybody's so accustomed to dealing with the Cubs in that light. What's the identity? How do you Chicagoans feel about it now or deal with it now?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's interesting because if this was a one-year wonder, I think everybody would just be partying for a week and just, okay, that's it. I've seen it all, right? But I think there's going to be a narrative that changes here, and that what I'm talking about is a pride about it now, because and even Joe Madden mentioned it last night. They have something set up here where now that they've broken through and they have one of the younger teams in the league, they can do this for a long, long time. Doesn't mean you're going to win every year. We know that. The Braves went 14 years in a row. They won one. But it's an interesting question, Mike. I think the narrative and the storyline changes now. There's going to be a pride about being a Chicago Cub fan, where in the past we're almost prideful of the lovable loser tag, right? We sort of enjoyed it after a while. But I think it's going to turn. They're going to enjoy sort of being on top of the mountain. And I could see in a very short order 29 other teams really hating the Cubs and Cub fans because this is going to be a very good team for quite a while.
It's like Golden State, right, Mike? Everyone loved Golden State, and then all of a sudden everybody hates Golden State.
Now they're the big boy in the block, and you want to see him get knocked off.
And Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Jesse Rogers with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. The rest of the baseball world now starts thinking about what goes forward. I agree with you. They're a dynasty in the making. Who's not back? Run through it for people who don't know all the details. Where are the question marks as far as who does come back next year?
Well, I think Dexter Fowler is the big one, the leadoff man in center field. They're crowded out there. I mean, Kyle Schwarber didn't play all year. Now he's back. So he's a free agent, and I think Dexter Fowler probably deserves a lot of money, and I'm not sure if the Cubs are going to give it to him. But that's a big hole to fill, especially more so offensively than defensively, so especially, I was going to say, at the top of the order. So Dexter Fowler is probably the biggest question mark. The other one is Aroldis Chapman. He's a free agent. I don't think he's back, but I think he did prove a lot to a lot of people. He was willing to take that ball whenever the manager wanted him to. Didn't work out last night, but he gave it his all. You got to give him a lot of credit. But the Cubs really don't have a lot back there right now. You saw what Joe Madden did. He didn't have a lot of trust in a lot of guys. So it's interesting. Does what Chapman did in the playoffs change what the Cubs are thinking about him? Would they offer him some big money? I still don't think that's the case. So they're going to have to replace the closer, most likely, replace the leadoff man. Those are two important ones. And I'll tell you, within a year, they're going to have to find some starting pitching. Jake Arrieta is going to be free agent. Jason Hamill he didn't make the playoff roster. He has an option they may or may not pick up. We know John Lester is going to be there. John Lackey has one more year left. So this team with this staff has one more year, but then they're going to have to bring in some new blood. And I think Mike Montgomery is a guy. He got his first career save last night. He's going to end up in the starting rotation. Joe Madden really likes this guy. So there's a few openings there, But when you think about Kyle Schwarber now for a full year and that infield, Russell, Bryant, Baez, and the ages of those guys, it's still going to be a very good team. But it's not exactly the same team coming back. They're going to have to fill some spots, especially that closer position.
Jesse, do we know when the parade is?
It looks like it's going to be Friday. There was some talk about it happening Monday. I assume it'll be official today. I think the team would like it. It will like to have it Friday. The GM meetings begin next week, of course, and to keep players around after such a long season, a lot of them want to go on vacation and the such. So it'll become official today. I think it'll be Friday unless the logistics are just too quick, and in that case, it'll be Monday.
All right. Jesse, well done. Unbelievable. It was fun to follow this thing with you. Good to talk to you again. Get some sleep. We'll see you soon.
Okay, guys. Take care.
Thanks,
right, Jesse Rogers with us, who covers the Cubs and he's from Northbrook. He's a crazy fan of all the Chicago sports teams all his life, so he's holding it together.
I think it's a great point, though, he makes about winning it, Doug, after so many years. And because I know people in Boston talked about this, what's the identity, after you get that win of the course? It's certainly something you want to deal with and see how you're going to handle it. I'm not meaning it in a negative way, but I do think there is a difference if you're built for a one-year wonder type of thing or built like the Cubs are, to where you are going to be the favorite for years to come.
And you think about what Theo Epstein was able to do. He made a promise, and his promise was based on the idea, like, I'm going to be transparent. And he said, look, we're not going to be good for a while, but when we do become good, we're going to stay good. And so he has to live up to that to a certain degree. I mean, look, they're going to have the key to the city for eternity, but there's a reality that he's getting back to work, and those are big decisions. I mean, Dexter Fowler, is Almora Jr. ready? Are they going to be able to go with Rondon in the back end of the bullpen? And as we saw the sliver of difference between these teams, that one player can make the difference of winning that World Series and losing that World Series. So, but look, the euphoria of Chicago and that championship is going to endure. But what the moves they make will determine if they're going to be able to sustain it for a long period of time.
Yeah, great fun, no question about it. Doug Glanville is in our studio again and played for the Cubs a lot during his career, was on the 2003 team that came so close. So because I like the fact that you're sort of a bigger picture thinker. Let's talk about the concept of tanking.
Yeah.
Tanking, Golick, is something we've talked about and bemoaned on this show forever. Yeah. I am morally opposed to it conceptually because I've been a fan all of my life. I was a season ticket holder. My parents, not me, my family had season tickets to games through so much of my life that to charge full ticket prices and all of that kind of stuff for full seasons where you're not actively trying to win, there's something inside of me that is just opposed to that. And yet, when you sit and you look at it, when you do it right, it is inarguable that it's the best way to put something together. Now, you blow a couple of these picks, and now you stink, and you stink forever.
Right.
Or you look at a team like the Knicks that decided to try and do it because they were going to save all this money up, and they were going to get LeBron, and they were going to get this one and that one, and they never do. But when you do it right, like this guy did, there's really no way for me to sit here and attack it. It's 100% the right thing to do.
Right. You're not going to hear a complaint from Chicago fans right now. All right. So, whatever they went through before is literally erased right now, and that is the beauty of having success. You can reframe history. You can reframe it and say, okay, that's why I went through those things, right? So that's part of it. Absolutely. Look, it's business, right? I did a lot of work with the union and the executive subcommittee with the Players Association. We understand that competitive balance, trying to create that when there was these sort of dynasty flavors. Now you want to try to spread the wealth, so the bigger market shares we're able to share with the smaller market shares. And then the draft, and making these adjustments. So it became clear it was a bad thing to be in the middle of the pack. That's no man's land because you're not winning enough to build and attract, but you're also not losing enough to be able to draft the top echelon players. So, you need to either win it or be at the bottom. That is the purity of the economics of it. So, and yeah, it is a little bit of a problem. You hear GM, some people complain about it. Like, I don't want to have a disincentive to not be successful. But like you said, the Cubs have shown you a blueprint of why that does work.
Yeah, middleman loses in this case. I want to go back to the game because it was such an incredible game. As you look at it, and there were so many twists and turns, in your mind, were there any – what stood out to you as a move that was a great move or a move that you wouldn't have made on either side?
Oh, man. I mean, it's Chapman was the big storyline. Like, when is this guy going to come in? I mean, because everybody wanted to know, will he have velocity? Will he have command? And look, the guy was exhausted. I mean, everybody's exhausted at this point. So that was, and I felt it started game 6 with the fact that he went out in the 9th inning. And Joe Madden kind of admitted that
it was a mistake.
He was blindsided because he's like, wait a minute, if they score, there's a deficit where we don't need him. So that was, to me, the big storyline, but it also showed how teams pick each other up. I mean, they were like, okay, he struggled, but they found a way to recover, sort of almost picking him up on his behalf. So, but I was really interested in the defense and base running, which was kind of a strength of both teams. I was a little bit sloppy, right? The feed, whether it was the Indians' routes in the outfield. I mean, there were some defensive struggles, a little base running, over aggressive. So they were able to right the ship, but they both were making mistakes. And I'm sure it was an exhausting time, but there was no doubt that was uncharacteristic of both teams.
All right, Doug Glanville is here with us. We'll keep talking with him. We got Jessica Mendoza coming from Cleveland. Aaron Boone, A-Rod is coming up today this morning, and we continue to work the phones. I'm seeing on Twitter the Cubs have arrived back in Chicago. I'm seeing pictures of them there with the trophy and all that sort of thing. So we're working the phones, and we'll try and get as many of the champions as we possibly can for you. Also, the winning word in this hour, 25 minutes from now, we'll give you the word. You have a chance to win a fabulous trip with us to the college football championship game. And Golick, we'll hear from Terry Francona coming up next, because I know to the winners go the spoils. But boy, that guy did an unbelievable job.
Yes,
and that team played great. So we'll hear from him coming up as well after this word from Burger King. Mike, what is the best place to have your breakfast? How about on a warm croissant?
Yep, and right now at Burger King, get 2 breakfast sandwiches for $4. Maybe you want that sausage on and with their eggs and your light flaky croissant, or maybe you want some thick cut smoked bacon on that light flaky croissant. Either way, you can get 2 of them for just $4. Very hard to resist that Burger King croissant. It isn't breakfast, we know. It's Burger King breakfast. Get 2 breakfast sandwiches right now for just $4, only at Burger King. Restrictions do apply. Price and participation vary. We're back after this on Mike and Mike.
And the next pitch to Martinez, a swing and a slow chopper toward third. Here comes Bryant on to first, and the Cubs have won the World Series. A moment that many thought might never happen has happened here in Cleveland. For the first time in 108 years, the Chicago Cubs are World Series champions.
The call on ESPN Radio. The word's still somewhat difficult to digest. The Cubs have won the World Series.
Yes, it is. It is.
Golick is having a tough time with it this morning, but he's handling it pretty well. And the donuts have just arrived.
There you go.
Courtesy of Metropolitan Ray over there. Listen, he knows the pain. His team lost the World Series last year. Your team lost the World Series this year. And I'm feeling pretty good. Ben Zobrist named the World Series MVP. Other sports news, Thunder play the Warriors tonight, so that's Westbrook and Durant for the first time. There's also a decent football game tonight, Falcons and Buccaneers. SportsCenter with you, brought to you by AutoZone.
We're giving you a chance to be on the road with us to the national championship game. Just be listening in the next 15 minutes or so. Every weekday for your chance to win the Mike and Mike on the road to the college football playoff sweepstakes presented by AutoZone. Visit mikesroadtothecfp.com for official rules.
So we're playing this song a lot this morning. And there is one song, however, that we could use in its place as of this morning if we wanted to. Poignant. It's poignant.
Whatever.
All right, so quickly, before we get to Golick's emotions and we play Terry Francona, Doug Glanville in our studio, we just heard, for those of you with us on TV, from David Ross, the grizzled veteran who hits a home run in his final game, and the players called him Grandpa. But when you have a team filled with as many young guys as this one does, as a longtime major leaguer yourself, how would you describe the value of having that kind of presence around all these young players?
Well, critical. I mean, absolutely a necessity because, not only the contribution of just having the institutional knowledge, just being around the game, understanding matchups, being able to pass on information about approaching a pitcher or how to address base running or situational defense. It's also the small things. He knew how to frame pitches to get the strike zone expanded for his rotation, his staff. He understood how to pass that on. You have to be a teacher, and just because you've been in the league doesn't mean you know how to pass it on well. But Ross clearly had the ear of these young players and understood that he was a critical part of making them grow and mature as quickly as possible, because that's what you have with young players. You need them to mature quickly to match that talent when you're talking about 21, 22-year-olds or an infield as young as the Cubs.
I know that I'm sort of now changing gears a little bit on you, Golick, but there is a train of thought right now that's one of the things that's missing in football, that the unintended consequence of the salary cap and things like that is that you have either, you got a quarterback who makes $100 million,
high-priced guys, and you got your foot soldiers,
and then but the foot soldiers, as opposed to guys like you who would have been making like the middle amount of money,
younger and lower paid, so you lose that locker room leadership. What happens is, in football, is you look at the highest paid guy or your quarterback and you say you're the leader, and you can't do that. As I said many times, you should never have to vote for a captain. I don't care what team you're on. All players know who to gravitate toward in times of trouble. It's easy for someone to lead when things are going well. When things aren't, everybody knows who to lean on. So it's a good point. In football, you're kind of losing that guy, that grizzled type veteran who you can look to see this is how to be a pro, this is how to prepare for a game, this is how to not fall into the trap of midseason or later in the season. It's a good point.
Twitter reaction all morning long. Todd tweets at us, when does Theo go into the Hall of Fame and get his statue? I should know this, but I don't. What are the rules about people like him? Like Pat Gillick went in a couple of years ago. What are the rules about architects, whatever the term that is used for him? There are only 4 of them in the Hall of Fame, right? You can't wait until 5 years after he retires.
Right.
So what exactly are the rules? Because you might as well just put him in right now. Let's find that out. JT tweets, does Cubs winning the World Series last night make it the greatest 3-1 series comeback in sports history? Unbelievable win.
Well, I don't know if it makes it the greatest in sports history because they were favored this whole time. I mean, you stay right in my city of Cleveland, where they were down 3-1 to a team that just set a record for the regular season.
Correct.
In Golden State. So
all of 4 months ago.
Yeah, so I would say no. I mean, the Cubs were a heavy favorite to win this World Series.
The difference is that no one on the Indians after Game 4 got suspended for kicking someone in the ding-ding.
There was no ding-ding kicking that cost you.
For the record, the Cubs are the first team to come back and win the World Series after being down 3-1 since the 85 Royals. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, the We Are Family Pittsburgh Pirates did it against the Orioles. They were the last team to do it, winning games 6 and 7 on the road. Keep the Twitter reaction coming all morning long. Let's do some Straight Talk here, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost, because there can only be one winner. And to the victor goes the spoils. But, Mike, as a Clevelander and a Cleveland fan, all kidding aside, you got to be proud of what that team did, about the injuries they overcame, about that manager who is just tremendous. And, look, you go 10 innings in Game 7 of the World Series.
You're right there.
In a series where both teams scored the same number of runs over the course of 7 games. You got a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, I mean, listen, going 10 innings, I didn't expect it as I was watching the game, Doug. I felt like Cleveland was always trying to climb back into it, and I never felt completely comfortable. Then you get the 2-run shot to tie it up in the 8th. I'm like, okay, there's not a lot of time, going to extra innings, but how long, could it go? Where okay, we have a chance to scratch out a couple of runs, but it was the Cubs who did it in the top of the 10th. Yeah, I mean, it is great, but I'll still say as a former athlete, I don't know when those players will get over it. They'll be you what if for the rest of your life as an athlete. I mean, you what if about an individual play, a bobbled ball, a missed opportunity in any sport. So with the players, the fans will be sad. They'll get up, they'll go to work, they'll talk about it, say, boy, what a great year, and they keep going on. For players, it's a little tougher. I think that sticks with them for a long time.
It was their window. Like 2003 Cubs, that was my only postseason experience at the major league level. That was it. So you don't know, to be able to go to the World Series, David Ross's story to win with the Red Sox, and I mean that's such a rare opportunity, a rare resume to kind of hang your hat on. So you recognize that it's very difficult to be able to get there and even just make it to the postseason. So it will stay with you because, for me, that 03 was my moment. And I was very grateful to even just get there. But at the same time, when you do, you want to finish it off.
Let's hear from Terry Francona. You played for him, Doug. We know him from his years here at ESPN. He's a great manager. He's a great guy. This was a tough night.
That was an incredible game. I mean, to be a part of. And I talked before the game about being an honor to be in a game like that. But to be associated with those players in that clubhouse, it is an honor. And I just told them that. It's going to hurt. It hurts because we care. But they need to walk with their head held high because they left nothing on the field. And that's all the things we ever asked them to do. They tried until there was nothing left.
Listen, everything he said is true, but just as a player, you're probably not ready to hear that just yet. At some point, you'll go over the game in your mind, but I think for the most part, you're going to be sick for a bit.
Yeah, and look, and this is consistent with Terry Francona. I mean, I played for him for 3 years in Philadelphia. He always talked about the effort. He was very rarely, it wasn't about physical mistakes. He focused on your approach, your effort, and that was the only time he'd get honest if he felt we were flat or not really giving 100%. And he's taken that and that ability to work well with players and be personal and hilarious basically all the time and matched it with now a tactical advantage. He's become such a genius in managing his team in the X's and O's department. And as a player, when you play long enough like a David Ross, you realize that you're in the same family, right? There is a fraternal order. Both teams, you look across the dugout and you see guys that you played with, and you realize that they were very much a part of how you got there and part of your journey. So you're going to be a little bit torn outside because you understand what it is to be in that other dugout, even though this is a euphoric moment for the Cubs. And Francona is the class of baseball when it comes to managers and the people that most players would love to play for.
Mike and Mike, Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage in America's largest and most dependable networks. Back to the sort of sports geek side of me, despite the fact that they don't win, I've heard people suggesting, and I think I agree, that the way he managed this series, and in particular the usage of guys like Andrew Miller, might actually be the beginning of a new era for the sport. The notion of you got the 7th, you got the 8th, you got the 9th, that may actually now become the past in Major League Baseball, and this could be the future of Major League Baseball. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, well, certainly there's no doubt the postseason has been redefined. How it will leak into the regular season, it's a little different equation because you just don't have those days off like you do built into the postseason structure to say, okay, well, Miller's going to pitch. I already know I'm off on this day, and then we can kind of go 2 innings. I mean, Mariano Rivera in his top season threw 74 games out of 162, so that's in the high 40 percentile. But in the postseason, he go 5 out of 7, 4 out of 7, well over the majority. So that is a different structure, and it's a little hard to replicate during the season. But the numbers are in. The reality is any starting pitcher, the vast majority, get worse the more times you see him as a hitter. And those numbers start to sway to start to believe that the bullpen needs to now come in early to give hitters different looks. It's a nightmare for me as a hitter to go in and say, wait a minute, I'm facing a guy, oh, here's a different guy, and here's a different guy, It's like why you struggle against young guys coming up from AAA. You've never seen these guys before. So that could be something. And you see Tampa Bay, by the way, Tampa does that a little bit. They've started guys. Their 5th starter was basically a closer. He'd come in for two games, and then 2 innings, and then all of a sudden they'd mix it up. And I saw them do that to Bryce Harper, who was like, who's this next guy? And he struggled that game. So you will see that shift. It's a little more challenging during the regular season.
It's interesting. Baseball is the one sport that is the most different from the regular season to the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, basketball, you're playing the same game.
Yep.
Football, you're playing the same game. Baseball, the game is completely different for all the reasons you just
regular
described.
Post, yeah.
Doug, listen, I hope that the former Cub in you got some pleasure out of watching that last night. Congratulations to whatever degree that's in order. Thanks for stopping by this morning.
Yeah, guys, appreciate
Good to have you in here. Always appreciate your perspective. All right, up next, the most important thing we'll do all morning, we're going to give you the word, we're going to give you the ways to enter, and you're going to come with us to the College Football National Championship game. game. Plus Aaron Boone and Jessica Mendoza and A-Rod and more on the way after a word from ZipRecruiter. Here's the question. Are you hiring? And if so, do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? To find the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all the top job sites, and now you can.
With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites and social networks like Facebook and Twitter, all with a single click. Find candidates in any city or industry, and find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 1 million businesses. And right now, listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/Mike. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Mike. Again, you can go post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/Mike. We're back after this on Mike and Mike.
Start your day with Barbasol Shaving Cream, America's leader for a close, comfortable shave.
All right, we are Mike and Mike, and our Sports Center is brought to you by Tommy John. Experience comfort you never knew existed with Tommy John, the 21st century men's underwear, backed by the best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Use the promotional code Mike at TommyJohn.com now. You'll save 20% on your first order, TommyJohn.com. His great uncle, Theo Epstein's great uncle, was the one who won the Oscar for Best Screenplay. He wrote the movie Casablanca.
It's impressive.
Which, in my opinion, is the greatest movie ever made. I think many people think that.
I don't know if many people think that. I don't know if many people have really seen it.
You think many people have not seen that? I think if you were to poll people what's the greatest American movie ever made, the name Casablanca might come up as many times as practically any other movie. Like The Godfather, some people I think would say. Citizen Kane.
Will it come up as much as like The Hangover?
It's going to come up probably a little bit more often than The Hangover. Not in the Golick household, obviously.
Wedding Crashers?
No, it's no Wedding Crashers.
Okay, all right.
And it's not Step Brothers.
I knew we had to find our levels here, okay? He's no Ricky Bobby.
Let's not get crazy.
Oh.
He's not Ricky Bobby. All right, today's word is an easy one. And again, we are partnering up with our friends at AutoZone to give you a chance to come on the road with us to the college football national championship game. We're going to give you the word. We're going to give you the ways to enter. You get in the zone. AutoZone. Thanks to AutoZone for letting us bring a winner every single day. You and a guest on your way with us to the national championship game. And because the Chicago Cubs are champions of the world, today's word is champions. CHAMPIONS. This should be especially easily spelled for all of you in Chicago this morning. So that's the word of the day. And Golick, here are the two ways to enter.
These are the only two ways. Make sure you enter these two ways, and you are allowed to enter both ways. Gang, it can't get any easier. Just register these two ways, and you may be coming, you and a guest, with Greeny and I. It's going to be 30 people total for this. We're getting 15 winners and their guests coming with us to Tampa Bay. It's going to be fantastic. So the word is champions. Two ways you can enter. Text champions to 777-000, or you can enter it online at mikesroadtothecfp.com. Again, the word is champions. Text it to 777-000. Or enter online with that word at mikesroadtothecfp.com.
All right, so we got that and more for you this morning. And again, with our endless gratitude to you for waking up and starting your mornings, whether they come on the days after heartbreaking losses, which we've seen many of, and today for all of you in Cleveland, that's the emotion, or unprecedented euphoria, which unquestionably is what we have this morning in Chicago. And I think Jesse Rogers made a good point earlier this morning. The Cubs, who have been America's lovable losers forever, this year I think were America's darlings.
Yeah.
I think they're on the verge now of getting to be so good for so long.
So what will they be next year?
It'll turn the other way. Well, they're going to be favorites.
I get that. The perception of the non-Cub fan, when again, your horse is out of the race, how are you perceiving them then?
Let me answer that question with a question. Will the fact that they are basically all homegrown, the fact that they drafted all these guys, they didn't go out and put together a bunch of mercenaries. Now, yeah, they went out and they got Lester and
sure,
and
there's
a
always
few
going to be a couple. There's always going to be.
But the core of that team is all homegrown. will that make them an easier team for people around the country to continue to stomach?
Yes, I would think it would, because there is consistency there over a number of years because of that. Again, they had 6 starters in that game who were 24 or younger, instead of a team just trying to hire the big guns for a year or two and then move on and try it again with a whole different roster. I absolutely think that if the Cubs are consistently good and you're consistently saying the names, of Russell and of Bryant and of Schwarber and others, year after year after year, and they're either in the World Series or deep into the postseason or maybe win another World Series, I do think there is something to that, yes.
Look, the best thing that can happen to a sport is that it creates stars. If there's been one criticism of baseball in recent years, it's that they don't do a good enough job of making their players into stars. Well, this team has 1 trillion stars.
It does.
They got a bunch of young, extraordinarily telegenic, marketable players with great spirit. That kid, Javi Baez, I mean, if you don't love him, what are you paying attention to? Chris Bryant, I told you earlier this morning, there is a debate in my household whether or not he's handsomer than Zac Efron. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty nice conversation to be having about a baseball star.
There's a debate. Are you debating that with your daughter?
I'm in it. Yes, I'm into that.
You're in that debate?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
He's a lot bigger than Zac Efron.
Yes.
Markedly.
Not
we have stood
big.
next to Zac Efron.
Chris Bryant's
Zach is we.
Yeah.
And Chris Bryant is not. He's very handsome. You agree?
Oh, I agree. I didn't know you were in the debate. I just thought that would be your...
Well, who do you think is better looking, Chris Bryant or Zac Efron?
I think that's left to your 16-year-old daughter, or I think at one point my daughter Sydney, who's 21, tweeted that, while I'm rooting for the Cubs when it was Arrieta was pitching, she said, I'm rooting for the Indians fans. Don't be mad at me, but, that Cubs pitcher, pretty good looking.
She likes the beard.
She does.
I've noticed that on her Twitter.
Also, he's a big dude. He's 6'4", 230 or something like that.
Bryant is 6'5".
No, I'm talking about Arrieta.
No, I get that, but I'm saying
Bryant is 6'5",
and handsomer. He's handsomer. He just flat is.
Is it handsomer or more handsome?
Both.
Okay.
He's both of those.
All right.
Anyway, but the point, I think, remains, despite the inanity of this conversation, and you'll have to excuse us, because, there's a combined 4 hours of sleep going on here this morning. To give you an indication, again, of how tired Golick is, he told the same story to me twice during a break, and I'm so tired, I just told that story twice.
Yeah.
So we're doing the best we can to hold it together. We do have Aaron Boone coming up in just a couple of minutes. We have Jessica Mendoza live from Cleveland this morning. We got A-Rod live this morning, and most importantly, we have your Twitter reaction all morning long to what might have been the greatest Game 7 in baseball history. All that as we continue today, and the winning word, again, we look forward to taking you with us to Tampa for the national championship game. Stay with us. Golick's hanging in there. Bring this man a donut. Stat. Woo! We roll on. Mike and Mike.
Now with your American Express card, it's 2 times as splendid to shop small at local stores, because today is 2-Day, and you could earn 2 times your rewards. So now those Main Street beats and corner treats are 2 times as cool and 2 times as sweet. One-of-a-kind finds have 2 times the surprise, and hidden spots are 2 times the tops. There's always a special feeling when you shop small in your neighborhood. And now that it's 2-Day, it feels 2 times as good.
Now through December 31st, you could earn 2 times your rewards when you shop small with an enrolled American Express card. Learn more and enroll at AmericanExpress.com. You will not earn 2 times rewards on any bonus you may already enjoy with your card. Prepaid and corporate cards, cards issued by other financial institutions, the Plum Card, and certain other cards are not eligible. Reward cap and other terms apply.
Learn more and enroll online today at AmericanExpress.com. Get out, get together, and shop small.
Hey, college football fans, I'm Ivan Maisel. On the latest Championship Drive podcast, we break down the new playoff rankings, and we're joined by Oklahoma State's Mike Gundy and South Florida's Willie Taggart.
Oregon brings an offense averaging over 40 points per game into the Coliseum to face the red-hot USC Trojans. Coverage begins Saturday at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio, presented by Dr. Pepper.